Welcome to Beyond the Pod, presented by SodaStick.com.
Brunette, he moves, Brunette back in, he scores! Minnesota has upset the Colorado Avalanche! Andrew Brunette, the game-winning goal!
Here are your hosts, the second greatest scorer in Gopher hockey history, Pat Micheletti, and the second greatest hockey analyst on this podcast, Brandon Mileski.
All right, welcome to another edition of Beyond the Pod, starting off the 2021 offseason. I'm Brandon Mileski from The Fan. Pat Micheletti, my co-host on Wild Fan Line, joins me as always. Pat, great to talk to you for we're beginning another offseason of Beyond the Pod.
We are. It's great to be back, Brandon. Good to see you also.
And SodaStick.com is back as our sponsor. Happy to have them aboard. And our first guest of the offseason is the GM for the Minnesota Wild, Bill Guerin. Bill, thank you so much for your time this morning. Really appreciate it. And I was just thinking about in my life how I have a wife, I've got a career, I've got 3 kids under the age of 6, and I struggle to balance all 3 of those things, and I feel like I can't give 100% effort to any of them. And then I'm looking at your plate this offseason, and you got the contract negotiations, you got the NHL draft, you got the expansion draft, you got free agency, maybe some trades down the line, and I'm not even talking about what's going on away from your job. How do you prioritize all this in terms of what you want to get done this summer?
Well, I can tell you from experience that your plate is more full than mine. That's for sure. We had 4 kids in 5 years, right in the middle of my career, and so I get what you're going through. It is not easy. Yeah. And but it's going to be a busy off season, and we're prioritizing what we need to do with player contracts, and I mean we even have a boatload of staff contracts coming up and things like that. We got to make sure that everybody's taken care of, and and it's just a matter of putting your nose to the grindstone and getting it done. I mean, this is what the job is. It's 12 months a year. It's tough. We've got some really good players that need new contracts, and that's what it is. It's right. You just got to enjoy it.
You're never going to be satisfied until you win a Stanley Cup. That's your goal. And I know you said during the year, well, we had a great year. But so what if we lose in the first round or second round, whatever? But that being said, the progression that the team has made is got to make you pretty happy. Yeah. It did make me happy. I think the team took, a step in the right direction. I think as a team, we definitely did. And I think a lot of players as individuals took a step in the right direction. I understand that, hey, look, we went out in the first round again, but I just feel there's a way to go out and there's a way not to go out. And the thing that I really liked is that our team didn't die. We just didn't roll over and go away. It was, where we had the character and the will to fight back and to scratch and claw and get into a Game 7 with one of the top teams in the league, and we could have won that game, and but that's the way it goes, and we're never satisfied until we win, and we've got to keep building towards that. Well, Brandon and I have watched this team for a number of years, and as you have as a assistant GM and scout, and playing against them and all that kind of stuff. But just to see, I mean, you could sense a change in the determination, the fight, the accountability, the backing each other up. I mean, that was pretty evident to anybody, I think, who watched this team this past year. Yeah, I agree with you, and I mean that was kind of the message that we wanted to send right away when I took over and kind of things changed, was like things have to change here. We have to get better. We have to lay it on the line a little bit more. And we brought in guys, like Ian Cole, like Nick Bonino, who had the experience of winning. And could kind of show the way. And I thought, everybody bought in. We have guys that know what to do too. The Polinos, the Spurgeons, guys like that. I think they needed just a little bit of a nudge.
and then they took over from there. I mean, I think Dean and the coaching staff did a great job with the guys too. There was tremendous buy-in on their part. The players deserve a lot of credit in this, and I mean, they're the ones out on the ice, and it was nice to see. They're a real team. I will add, these guys became a real team.
Yeah.
The things they were doing out on the ice, jumping in for each other, protecting each other, and talking to Dean too, like the things that were being said, like they were holding each other accountable. And when you have that, that's a real team. It's not a real, close team doesn't mean going out and drinking beer with each other and stuff like that. That's easy. You got to be able to say the hard things and do the hard things for each other.
Yeah. I'm sure you're keeping track of what's going on now. And, last night's game, the Islanders in Tampa, and, Islanders get their, butts beaten in a game earlier, and they come back last night and get the overtime win. But just, I mean, when you watch that, it's one of your former teams. And I'm sure you hope your players are watching that too. Their fight and determination was just incredible to watch last night.
Yeah, it was. And, I think, I think Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz deserve a ton of credit for, adjusting the attitude of that whole organization and turning things around. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. And I'm sure our guys were watching, but that's what it takes to win.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee they're going to win the next game, but they're fighting and scratching and clawing just to stay alive. And I think that's what we did too. There were some really good signs of a winning team in some of the things that we did.
Hey, Bill, the standard of officiating has always been different from the regular season to the playoffs, but it seems like that gap is getting even wider than what it once was. How do you feel about the way the games are called come playoff time? And as a GM, how do you construct a roster when the style of play that works in the regular season might not work in the playoffs?
Yeah, that's a tricky balancing act that you have to do. But listen, the referees are doing as best they can. The stakes are much higher. The game even gets more intense, more emotional. It gets quicker. Hey, look, as a GM or a coach or player, if something goes your way, yeah, you're okay with it. If not, then you kind of you get frustrated. But I try my best just to kind of roll with the punches. And you know what, if something doesn't go your way one night, it will the next. And I think we saw that in our series against Vegas. And we have these series supervisors, and we're in constant communication with them, and they do a very good job of just communicating and letting us vent or just talk things out. So it goes both ways.
Now, at the end of every season, after a team loses or how a team wins a cup, you get people talking, well, they need this to get to that next level. They need that to get to the next level. And do you just kind of sit back and let things settle down a little bit before evaluating what your team needs, you think, to get to that next level?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty good idea of what our team needs. I mean, especially this year, like we're always around, we're always watching, we're always kind of in tune with things. Do we want to take a step back after the season and reassess everything and go through everything? Yeah, absolutely. I think if you just kind of make your mind up and say, all right, this is what we need, without really actually going over it, 1, 2, 3 times, you'd be doing yourself a disservice. And just, we can't make knee-jerk reactions and make emotional decisions.
Hey, Bill, you might already be sick of Kirill Kaprizov questions at this point later in June, but I want to kind of try to take this from a different angle. I've always been curious how the process of negotiations work. Like, are you talking with Kaprizov's agents like every other day, once a week, once every couple of weeks? Is it phone, email, text, meetings? I mean, how does that entire process work from a negotiation standpoint between a GM and a player?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not a big text guy when it comes to important subjects, and so I don't do that. It can go in spurts, like for a little while before the playoffs, we were talking, every couple of days, we had some in-person meetings and things like that. Now, I mean, with the summer or the off season, it's slowed down a little bit, but there is still communication and we go back and forth, but it's been a good process so far. And I know there was a report last week that all this crazy stuff, and that's just nonsense. And we all know where it came from and what was going on. It's nonsense. And I don't like to do that stuff. I keep it between me and the agent and the player. And I feel like the process is going well. I mean, Kirill's super important to us, and we'll get it back.
Well, how about for you as a player? What was maybe the most difficult contract negotiation you had, or the most memorable contract negotiation you had?
All of them.
Yeah. Well, I had two holdouts as a player, so
you were tough.
A pain in the ass. One with New Jersey and Lou Lamoriello, and the other one with Edmonton and Glenn Sather. And both times, I guess I felt I had to do it, and I was holding my ground, and I was a bit of a pain in the neck, but it in the end, maybe it wasn't the smartest thing to do, and I could have just played hockey. But it's tough. It's tough. You feel you're worth something, and you want to prove it, and that's the way it went. So those are two tough ones, but there were some good ones too.
Hey, I mean, none of it's easy, right? But Brandon and I were talking before you came on, and we were the threat of or supposed the option of him going back to Russia. I mean, this is a kid who's competitive, who's driven, who's playing in the best league in the world. Why would he want to take a step back and go back? It makes no sense. So, I'm sure you guys will come to an agreement, hopefully soon.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, like I said, there's no secret how much, we love having Kirill here. He's been great for us. So I think it's a matter of time.
Yep.
Expansion draft, Bill. I know there's more options than just the 7-3-1 and the 4-4, and that you can try to make Seattle, you can give them something to make them select a certain player. But if you didn't have any of that, would you already know which players you would have protected right now if you had to make that decision right now?
Not really. We're still working on it. Remember how I said you got to go through things one or two or three times?
Yeah.
This one's more like 10 to 15.
Yeah.
Sure. And we're just trying to, we just want to make sure that we're not leaving, any stone unturned. We just want to make sure we're making the right decision, what's going to be best for us moving forward. We do know we will lose a good player.
Yeah.
We're happy with everybody on our roster. That's just the process. I mean, that's just what happens in expansion. So, we're going to have to bite our lip on one of these things.
I know you've mentioned, you're concerned about your team, not what other teams are doing. But that being said, is there conversations going on that would maybe spur you to protect player A compared to player B based on what those other teams might be losing or what Seattle might want? Position-wise?
Not really.
No.
Not really. I mean, there's going to be some chatter, leading up to it. There was, I got a few calls last week, and teams kind of kicking tires and seeing what we might be willing to do with players. And, some teams have, protection spots available and we could move guys. But right now I'm just focused on what will be best for us and not really worrying about all the, the horse trading and stuff like that.
Hey, Bill, I know at the time when you guys drafted Marco Rossi last year, many thought that he was kind of an NHL ready, or at least, maybe compared to other young draft picks, that he was more NHL ready than most of them. sounds like he's working out and everything's going great, at least right now. But what were your plans for him in terms of a timeline to begin with? And does the whole missing a season and COVID really kind of throw a huge wrench into this in terms of how you project what your lineup's going to be the next year or two?
Yeah, I guess the plan for him, if I can remember correctly, there's been a lot between then and now. What was to just have him come to training camp in January and see how he did.
Yeah.
The last thing that we're going to do is rush one of our young players. We've seen it for years and years and years and years. When young guys come into the league and they're not ready, it doesn't go well. It either ends their career quick, or they just struggle and struggle and struggle and don't get it until they're a second or third team. So we really just want to be patient with our younger players. That was the decision in not playing Matthew Boldy. And Marco, for basically missing a whole year, we're going to have to keep an extra close eye on him. Conditioning, strength, and all that stuff, not a problem with this kid. He's healthy now. He's on the ice. He's training, at 100%. So we're really looking forward to getting him into training camp and seeing what he can do.
Let's talk about Jordan Greenway. I know a lot was made after last season about your meeting with him and discussion. He got off to a great start this season. What did you think of his overall season, and is there still another gear left in his game, do you believe?
I thought Greeny had a really good year. I think he, even more than on the ice, I think what he was doing off the ice and how he was taking care of himself, how he carried himself as a pro, he really matured, and that's a big thing for Greeny. And when you do that, it translates to better play on the ice. I still don't think he's a finished product. I think he's somebody that we're gonna, and he knows this, we're gonna have to keep our thumb on and keep pushing him and making sure that he's doing the right things. I was kind of like that myself. I was a little immature when I first came in the league, and as a lot of guys are, and it's not the easiest thing, but you need time. And I think the biggest thing is that Greeny took a big step in the right direction.
Was there anything that surprised you, whether it be a player, whether it be the way you guys played, that went on throughout the year that you thought, that's pretty good?
Oh my God. There were a lot of surprises this year.
Yeah.
on and off the ice, it was, it was unreal. You know what? I mean, a pleasant surprise was Cam Talbot. We knew Cam was a good goalie. We knew he was going to help us, but the fact that he came in and he became such a big culture guy for us. He's a real pro. You guys know what I'm talking about. That's a big compliment. The way he carries himself, the way he treats his body, the way he prepares for games, the way he handles, the ups and downs, all those things. He's a very even keel guy. And he really helped the culture of our room and the on ice. He was just a calming presence for us out there. So, like I said, we knew he was a good guy. We knew he was a good goalie, but he was he went way above expectations.
Hey, Bill, I know Pat has suggested that maybe in a playoff style series that maybe this team needs to add a physical defenseman in the offseason. Obviously, defensively 1 through 6, you have a lot of talent back there, but not necessarily a big physical type guy. I know Carson Soucy's a little bit big on the bigger side, and Suter's not the most physical guy in the world. Do you think that is something that this team needs to add come playoff time for next year, hopefully?
Yeah, not just for playoff time, but I think just in general, I think we could use a little bit of size. We could use a little bit of a little more heaviness. You don't want to just play copycat, but you do see the teams that are left in the playoffs, and they do have pretty big D. They and it's not just for leaning on guys, but they take up space.
Yeah,
they take away time and space. They have long reaches. They have long legs. They're just kind of in the way. And that's definitely something that we're looking at.
Hey, this is a tough subject. Obviously, the loss of our good friend Tom Curvers the other day. Talk about a little bit about your relationship with him, what he meant to the organization. I go back with Tommy, God, 40 years. And, just it was a sad day and for all of the hockey world, really, with the loss of him.
Yeah. I guess it's really tough to put into words.
Yeah.
How much TK meant to us. For our small group here, he was just somebody that we looked up to, and he guided us every day here. And for 3 or 4 guys that are not from Minnesota, when we got here, he kind of said, "Hey, look, this is how it is." And he's been guiding us all along for the last couple of years, and he just had a way about him. And he would say things that would never have come out of my mouth, that just never would have thought of. And he would just put it in a certain way that was gentle but firm. And he was wise. He was wise.
Yeah.
And he's a beautiful guy. He really was. He would ask you questions that would stir up conversations, and not just to do it. He wanted to hear your answers, and he would listen, and he gave people time. And, I could go on for hours and hours. It's just,
right.
We miss him so much. But man, we were just we're much better just having known him and spent the time with him.
Bill, really appreciate your time today. Like I said, you got a lot on your plate right now, so I appreciate you taking a small segment of your day to talk with us.
Thanks a lot, guys. No, anytime. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Take care,
Thanks,
Bill. Thank you.
Bill Guerin, Minnesota Wild GM. Appreciate his time joining us today. And before you and I talk, Pat, let's talk about our sponsor on Beyond the Pod. That would be SodaStick, SodaStick.com. 4th of July is coming up, and our friends at SodaStick just restocked all of their 1980 USA hockey merch in collaboration with the Herb Brooks Foundation. A portion of the sales will be donated to the Herb Brooks Foundation. All of their apparel is screen printed here in Minnesota on super soft, super comfy shirts. You will love it. And now we're going to hook you up with 15% off your next order. Use the code KFAN for 15% off. That's SodaStick.com. Original Minnesota sports inspired goods. Use the code KFAN for 15% off your next order. And here's some of that 4th of July apparel right there. And Pat, let's talk about Tom Kerbers. I'm glad you brought that up with the GM. I know you were relatively close with him. We've had him on this podcast, on our shows, on the Fan multiple times. He was always gracious, always willing to jump on. I personally would text him throughout the last couple of years and just make sure he's doing okay. And I thought Ryan Carter had a statement on Twitter that you would never know. Tom would never truly tell you how bad the cancer was with him.
No.
He would, not that he would lie to you about it, but he would. He fought that thing. You always hear people fighting cancer courageously and being brave. He was, he would never really want anybody worrying about him.
No, that he just kept it stoic throughout the whole ordeal, and we talked a lot, and it just I just feel awful. I thought the other day, when I heard he passed, of our relationship, how long it's been, how it started. And listen, I played against him for 3 years when he was at UMD. And there was, at that time, Brandon, UMD was not considered a perennial champion, potential champion, nothing. But when he came into town, into Duluth, along with, Norm McIver, Bill Watson, Matt Christensen, Brett Hall, Jim Johnson, who had a long career, Guy Gosselin, guys like that. All of a sudden, they knew they were good. And when they knew they were good, that built up the hatred between Minnesota and UMD. And trust me, there was no, hey, I'll talk to you after the game type stuff. It was like, okay, we'll see you in another month or 2 weeks. And they were battles, and there was dislike. And long story short, then we go through our pro careers a little bit. And well, lo and behold, I joined a club that he's a member at. And along with Bob Mason, who was their goalie, and they were both members. And well, I had no one to play with, right? Well, I want to join their group, or because we knew each other, but it's not like we saw each other in the summer. And you know what? They're like, yeah, play with us every Thursday and Saturday, whatever. And that's where we really developed our relationship, our laughs we had together, and but and just to learn what type of person he was. It was just he's been just a tremendous friend throughout all these years.
For people that are like my age and younger, never really got to see him play. I know he won the Hobie Baker and had an NHL career for over a decade. Now I'm going to try to guess at what kind of player he was. I've never seen him play.
Yep.
But just judging off it, knowing him off the ice.
Yeah. He seems, his golf swing.
He seems like he had a high IQ.
Yep.
Was probably cool, calm with the puck on the ice. But also, I wouldn't say like his emotions would ever get the best of him, but I could also see him not putting up with crap.
Right.
Does that describe him on the ice? You tell me what kind of hockey player he is.
And I'll add silky smooth. I mean, when he put a pass on your stick, it was going to be perfect, and it was going to be soft, and it was going to be in your wheelhouse. Great hand-eye coordination, and he's a taller guy, and so he had that reach too. And it was you think, I'm not going to get hit. I'm not going to, because he's got that subtleness to him. But man, he was a great defender, uncharacteristically really good defender, underappreciated, really good defender, because, he was more of an offensive guy, when you looked at him, but man, he could defend. It was not easy.
All right. Well, rest in peace to Tom Kervers.
Yeah.
Really, really feel for, his wife and his kids. He still has two young, relatively young kids that have to go the rest of their childhood without a father. And he was a great father from everything I've heard, and somebody that was loved by everybody. I think you've seen since his death, the outpouring of support from the hockey community shows how much he was loved from a wide range.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's talk hockey in the last 10 minutes or so here, Pat. Kind of one interesting thing, we've talked a lot here in Minnesota about the need for a number one center because we've never really had it other than maybe Pavel Demitra for a short period of time, if you want to consider him a true number one. And I am one of those people that believes you need a number one center to succeed, especially in the long term. Yet, Pat, I look at the four teams remaining in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and Tampa Bay has some pretty good centers, but if you look at the other three teams, right? I mean, Vegas doesn't have a legit number one center. Montreal, I wouldn't say has that legit number one center. The New York Islanders, Brock Nelson and Barzal are good, but three of the four teams really don't have a legit number one. And you look at it's pretty rare. I think this is more of an outlier, but it is interesting that of the four teams, they've all spent money on their goaltenders. Carey Price is making a huge amount. Vegas has spent money on two goaltenders. Vasilevsky, Varlamov, still making $5 million plus for the New York Islanders. It's interesting because we've always had the belief of you need to have a number one center and you don't need to spend money on goaltending in the playoffs, and that has completely flipped this year.
I agree. I mean, look at Carey Price. He's the best goalie in the league, or he might be in the world. And then you can compare him to Vasilevsky. But you're right. And here's the thing, Brandon. And Victor Rask was picked on all year long. Okay, and that's fine. He's not a number one center. But here's the deal. I was thinking about this. I was thinking about all the centers that I played with, and I'll just use college for example. My centerman for the majority of my time at the U was a guy by the name of Rick Erdahl. Super smooth, really smart, was a distributor of the puck, right? And he knew how to get me the puck. Now, I also played with a guy who was second all-time leading scorer, or third, all-time leading scorer at Minnesota, and Corey Millen. Great player, great career, but he and I, we didn't mesh. We didn't have the chemistry to play with each other. So just because a player has street cred, is, viewed as a number one center, he better have chemistry with his wing or wingers. Because if you don't, it's not going to work. Which brings me back to, why is Rask with Kaprizov? How can he? Well, maybe that was the guy that fit the best with him, with what they had, and they built a little bit of chemistry. Now, would I want that going forward? Could you find someone a little bit better who had better chemistry, even more chemistry with Kaprizov? Absolutely. So the point being, you don't necessarily have to get a Jack Eichel. Just because a Jack Eichel comes here does not mean that he and Fiala or he and Kaprizov are going to have that chemistry. That's the way I kind of look at it. So,
It's interesting you bring that up, Pat, because I would look at Matt Zuccarello as, I've never thought he's a first-line forward.
Right.
But, he's a second-line forward, and I think he'd be very good in that role. But he has great chemistry with Kirill Kaprizov, so it works for the two of them. Or even, if you want to go farther down the lineup, Pat, Joel Eriksson Ek is better than a third-line center. Mm-hmm. And I know people could have debates as to what the first line is, second line, third line, and the Eriksson Ek line starts, so people call it the first line. But let's face it, that's a third line, checking line, defensive line that can also score.
Yep.
He's better than a third line center, but he has great chemistry with Marcus Foligno and Jordan Greenway, and they play a similar style of game. So, that's the way the puzzle fits.
So why would you break them up, right?
Yeah.
I mean, So there's a lot more that goes into it than just saying get the better talent, because that's going to make you better. Well, get someone who has good talent that meshes with somebody else, and I think you'll have more success.
Well, let's talk about Eichel then, Pat. I know you've been a little bit down on him compared to most in the community. I'm kind of in the middle on Eichel. I understand a first-line center of that talent isn't available very often. We know that. We know that very well here. Is there a possibility that he can leave a kind of a diseased culture and come somewhere with Minnesota and flourish with a guy like Kaprizov? I do think that's very possible. You saw Rhino Riley leave Buffalo and have tons of success in St. Louis. Taylor Hall got better once he left that team this year. So I do think there is something to taking somebody out of that market, out of that franchise, and moving him somewhere else. But I also don't know if he's to the level where I want to mortgage as much as you might have to mortgage to get him and pay him the salary you'd have to pay him. So I'd be interested in him. I would investigate him, and if the price is right, I would definitely be all in on Jack Eichel. Knowing that there's still risk there, but the reward is high, Pat.
If I'm the Buffalo GM, I don't necessarily want players as much as I want draft picks. You could offer them. I don't want to throw names out there because it's not fair to the guys in the organization. But you could throw 2 or 3 guys at them.
Yep.
Is that going to change Buffalo? I don't know. I really don't know. So I would want my own guys who I like in a draft. So that being said,
but when you're sending someone who's $10 million, you do have to bring in players of some sort, right? I mean, most teams just can't take on $10 million without shedding salaries.
I know. That's
yeah. But I understand.
Yep. But I just don't know how Minnesota can afford them unless they get rid of close to $10 million in salary, and is that going to be the right fit for Buffalo? With those players, for that amount of money, I know he'll probably be highly motivated. The injury really scares me that he has. He's going to have surgery from all reports. And what's the timeline of him getting back? If you didn't have the number of guys under contract that Minnesota does with the high salaries, that would make me a little bit more interested. But, to guarantee something like that with a no move, it really makes it tough.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to send off Fiala, maybe Fiala
right?
and Dumba,
and maybe a Boldy or maybe a Rossi, and I don't know if you want to do that. I mean, that really would be putting all your eggs in one basket. And I don't know if I would do that.
All right, Kirill Kaprizov. I know you mentioned it with Bill Guerin in that interview of Kevin Weeks coming out saying there's the threat of him leaving for Russia, and funny, Kevin Weeks has the same agent as Kirill Kaprizov, so we know where that leak came from. As you mentioned with Guerin, though, I don't buy. I just look at it as a negotiation ploy. I don't think there's a legit threat that he would leave to go back to. He would have to really hate it here, and I didn't get the impression based off of when you'd see him in interviews. He was smiling on the ice. He clearly had a good season. He played well here. It's not like he struggled. He's a competitive kid.
His teammates love him.
I still go back to before the season. Michael Russo, had a report once that Kaprizov was on this group text with everyone on the roster, and accidentally shared information of, why am I playing with these taxi squad guys? I want to play with the best. And I just think he has that mentality that he wants to be, not saying he's going to be the best player in the league, but I think he has the mentality of, I want to be the best player on the planet. And going to the KHL, and while you could get good money there, you ain't going to get NHL money there.
No.
It just doesn't seem it doesn't make any sense to me, other than this is just a negotiation play from the other side.
The travel, the buildings you play in, the notoriety, there's a reason why the NHL is the best league in the world. He wants to be the best. He wants to play in the best league in the world. And as you said, he wants to be the best player in the league. And when you have that mentality, I think at some point in the negotiations, he's going to have to speak up and tell his agent what he wants, what he can live with. Again, like you say, it's all part of contract negotiations with the superstar player. And you can talk about a superstar player in any sport. They all go through this. So I'm not worried about them getting it done.
I thought the one thing interesting Bill Guerin said regarding the contract negotiations was his communication with the agent, and about how before the playoffs they had lots of discussions, lots of talks, and he admitted it's kind of slowed down a little bit, which to me either means, well, there's kind of both sides have kind of dug in and are going to be in their spots and waiting for the other side to move in, or there's also the other rumors, Pat, that maybe this isn't all about money. Kaprizov wants to be proven. He wants it proven to him that they can put a center with him or someone to play with him on his line, and maybe that's the waiting game here. I don't know.
We could speculate all we want. I think the agent is looking out for what is best for him, and the agent is telling him, we can make a heck of a lot more money if we do it this way. How important is that aspect of it? It's certainly, every player wants to make as much as he can make, and you can't blame him for that. But ultimately, there will be a number, there will be a term where they can both say, yep, I think that's fair for both sides. I get to free agency in X number of years. And so, again, we just got to let it play out, and I think it'll work out.
Are you ready for our final topic, for a non-story that is kind of a story?
Yep.
We haven't heard anything about Zach Parise since the playoffs, and I kind of expected an ongoing drama throughout the offseason. He was clearly angry during the season. He was vocal about it when he was a healthy scratch. Either maybe this thing can be settled here, or maybe Zach is just going to go with the approach of, well, I'm just going to keep everything silent and not have everything going through the media, because we haven't heard anything about it.
We have not. We probably will, in a month's time, I would think. The thing is, Brandon, a star player has it in his head that my game's not going to drop off. It doesn't drop off. I can still do the things that I've done in the past. And it's like a golf game, right? You and I were talking about our golf games. And, as you get older.
That's what we talked about before the podcast.
Yeah, as Father Time gets, hits you a little bit more, you don't hit the ball as far, right? Yep. You're not as crisp. You're not, you don't putt as well, all that kind of stuff. And that is
has the mental impact on you too.
It just happens. But you know what? You and I think, I still got it. But then you go out there and you hit it and it's not there. So, I think for Zach, he's got to change his mentality of what he is as a player and grasp it and accept it. And can he still be an effective player? Yeah. But he can't play 20 to 22 minutes a night because, his body just won't allow him to do that. Not his fault. But, so I think, maybe they're letting each other just breathe a little bit and get to an understanding. And, whether he wants to be here or not, I don't know that. I don't think you know that. But, at some point, they've got to come to a point where everyone is going to be happy with whatever the role ends up being.
Pat, it's great to talk hockey with you again. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great, right. Brandon. Take care.
All right. Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Pod. Reminder, Beyond the Pod brought to you by SodaStick.com. Use the code KFAN for 15% off your next order. Really appreciate you listening or watching Beyond the Pod. We'll talk to you next week.